Kids Peeps, Dr. Lynn is in the house with my Cold and Coffee, and we're going to talk about testing today and what test is best. So when you call our office and we tell you, I'd wait a day, I'd get it today, I'd wait a couple more days, there's a method to the madness. Let's talk about it. All right, first one is the molecular test that you do when you feel like poo-poo. So it's a PCR. This is the gold standard per the CDC. So this is the one that all other tests are weighed against. So it is basically the PCR you hear about, and we're looking for the RNA from the SARS-CoV-2 virus. So we have this RNA in the back of our nose, and we get the swab and we go way back there to try to get the best sample that we can. We put in this viral media, we ship it off to a lab, and the lab runs it. So what is the lab doing here? Well, it's this machine, and it's called a PCR, and what it's trying to do is it's amplifying genetic material so it can pick it up. And even like one molecule, if you amplify that enough, this thing's gonna be positive. But that's why 3 months later, if you get another test and you're positive, because you still maybe have one sticking molecule of RNA up your nose. So it's gonna cycle until it finds that. So it's up the nose, either way back, middle, anterior, back in the throat. It can be saliva, it can be urine, it can be stool, it can be fluid from the lungs. Now, the false negative rate. Let's talk about this. The false negative rate, basically, on day one of symptoms, the false negative rate is almost 40%. I think that's a little too high, don't you guys? Now, but if you wait, this was based on some studies, if you wait until about day 3, then your false negative rate goes down to about 20%. So days 3 through 5 are the sweet spot. That's when you want to get your kids tested with the PCR. Now, false positive rate, almost negligible. The next test that you'll do if you're symptomatic is called a rapid antigen test. And remember, antigens, we've talked about this before. Antigens are these proteins that are displayed to our body when we're infected with something that make our immune system start working. So we're not looking for genetic material, we're looking for antigens. And so they're protein fragments from a virus. That's an antigen. It's both nose and mouth. So the problem with this, you should really only do a rapid antigen if you're symptomatic, per the CDC. Now, also, it's gonna be falsely negative more often. So that means typically you have to retest with this one. They say if you have symptoms and you're negative, you should retest. You should keep testing until you turn positive. Yeah, I know, it sounds exhausting. But we have had many people in our office that had a false negative rapid antigen test because they were tested too early. So if you typically wait until about 24 to 36 hours into your infection, that's gonna be the best time to test for, okay? That's gonna be the best time to test because that's when your viral load is typically the highest. All right, so, and it's most reliable early on, which we talked about. And false positives, almost negligible here too. All right, guys. Now, people love these antibody tests. They love them because they're like, this is the best. I'm immune, I'm not immune, whatever. But you have to understand, antibody tests are not to be done when you are sick. It's after the infection. And in all honesty, it's the wild west of science right now, people, because antibody tests are all over the place. Some of them are really great, some of them are terrible, and you just don't know which one you're getting when you want to go get your antibodies done. And is it telling you that you have a robust enough immunity? We don't know. It's just a new disease. So we're trying to figure this stuff out, right? Now, with the antibody test, remember, we're picking up those antibodies that our immune system makes. Those cells spit these puppies out, and when it sees the antigen. So if you do it too early, false negative. If you do it too late, false negative. And the false positives, they can be all over the place. Because like I said, this might be just picking up, antibodies from a previous coronavirus infection that wasn't SARS-CoV-2. So it's just crazy. It's like the Wild West, people. So what are the big ideas? The big ideas here are, first of all, testing should not determine your activity. If you want to go to grandma's and you get a test before you go to grandma's, that doesn't mean that you're not infected, because remember, we have that pre-symptomatic period of time where you basically aren't manifesting symptoms. And if you get tested too early in that time, then it's going to be negative. The other one is the type of test results based on the timing of your disease state. So how many days from your symptom onset, which we already discussed here. We already discussed. It's important to get tested on the dates that your doctor tells you to get tested. Also, antibody test should not determine if you go back to school or work. Because remember, we talked about this. We don't know how it's measuring those antibodies. Do you have a robust enough immunity? And it's not telling us anything about being able to like get out of quarantine or stuff. All right. So it should not be used to get out of quarantine, go back to school or work. Now, caveat, the CDC has come out with a recommendation for travel because people are going to travel. Pandemic's terrible. Just be safe when you travel. All right. Just be safe. Make good choices about where you're going, wear your mask, that sort of thing. Now, the CDC says though, if you're going to test before you travel, that you should not do it any earlier than 3 days before you test. Now listen, if you get a negative test before you travel, remember, you could still turn positive the next day. So there you go. The dirty on testing and why we do what we do. What are we gonna do? Wash our hands, wash our hands, wash our hands so we can flatten the curve, and we're gonna wear a mask over our nostrils, and we're gonna get the vaccine, right? We're gonna distance, we're gonna do all this stuff, and we're gonna test if we're sick. All right, love you guys. Dr. Lane signing out.